It's Friday night, and 20-year-old Oscar Redman doesn't have a care in the world.
What the hell?
All of a sudden, he hears somebody ringing his doorbell.
I need your phone, man. Johnny's been shot.
It's his neighbor, Paul Chappelle.
Hello? 911? Yeah, my friend's been shot. Look, just get here right now.
Oscar runs over and finds his friend Johnny Crawford is on the floor.
What the hell, man? I gotta get out of here.
Oscar looks down, sees Johnny on the floor. There's blood coming out of his mouth.
It can't breathe.
Great, thank you.
Enjoy.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Can I get you anything else?
I think we're all set.
Okay, thanks, guys.
To us.
Going out to dinner with my wife was a rare event.
Or let's make it to you for putting up with me all these years.
I had made the incredible mistake of overlooking our anniversary because I was on another kiss. This was the makeup for that. I'm looking at this dinner
Looks great.
and I'm thinking this is going to be great.
Excuse me, Mr. Kenda. I'm so sorry, sir, but you have a phone call and they insisted that I get you.
It's Kenda.
Kathy responds with the narrow eyes, something one always wants to avoid with her, the narrow blue eyes.
Okay, I'll be right there. I'm so sorry. Stay and enjoy your meal. We'll try this again next week, I promise.
I felt absolutely awful when I was waiting to feel a steak knife in the back as I was walking out toward the door.
Minutes later, Kenda checks in with Detective Skip Arms.
Lieutenant,
Skip, so what do we got?
shooting upstairs in the victim's apartment. Victim's already been transported to St. Francis.
Do you know who the victim is?
A 19-year-old Johnny Crawford. He took one to the chest, one to the foot. Dead on arrival.
All right, so take a look.
I'm escorted up to the apartment in question. The crime scene itself is fairly simple to review because nothing has apparently been disturbed.
Excuse us for a second.
The victim is shot while he is sitting in an easy chair.
We also found a bullet hole in the wall and a bullet hole in the floor. So we know we had multiple shots fired.
3 markers are for the casings.
They all the same caliber?
Yup.
They're .25 caliber automatic. Somebody throws 3 bullets at this guy and hits him twice.
Found a weapon on the other side of the chair.
It's a hunting knife, cheap quality, that hunters carry to skin game with. But it's in a sheath and snapped in place.
The knife could raise a number of questions as to whether it was used in defense by the victim or if there was another assailant.
Nope, no blood.
But it'd be odd that somebody would put the knife back in the sheath if in fact it had been taken out.
Any witnesses?
Yeah, Johnny's roommate, Paul Chappelle, he was here during the shooting. He was outside in the hallway being questioned. And then their neighbor, Oscar Redman, he came down after the shooting.
All right, we'll go talk to the roommate.
Oscar Redman was an aftermath person. He doesn't really know what happened. He wasn't there when it happened. The guy that's more important to me is Mr. Chappelle.
You talked to him for a minute.
Because he is in this apartment when this whole event occurs.
So you're the roommate, Paul Chappelle?
Yeah,
How long have you known Johnny?
not long, a couple months.
Johnny Crawford was from West Virginia. He had heard that, maybe there was some work for him out here in Colorado Springs, so he was just trying to get his life started.
He came across some hard times and was out of a job when this incident happened.
So you were here when he got shot?
I didn't see it. I was in the kitchen the whole time. Johnny was in the living room talking to these 4 guys.
That surprised me a little bit. 4 people, that's important to know. So I said, do you know those people?
Actually, yeah, I knew one of them, Bud Carpenter. Johnny used to room with him at his old place.
Paul Chappelle says that there were 3 other men he'd never met before. 2 men with blonde hair, and a 3rd man who was very muscular and stood on the side.
What were they talking about?
I don't know, something about a guitar and an amp.
See our amp. Where's our guitar?
I don't know.
What about the amp? Could we just at least get our amp?
No, I don't know about that. You should probably go.
And then the next thing I know,
Swear to God,
things escalate.
Dude, whoa. Sit down. Sit down.
He drops down to his knees and just kind of gets in a corner. But he hears them leave.
Paul says nothing prepared him for the scene he would encounter in the living room.
What the hell are you doing, man? Go get help.
And when I came out, the other guys had left, and Bud was giving Johnny CPR.
You say to yourself, well, he didn't do it because he was trying to help him. Well, not necessarily. It's not uncommon for people in a moment of anger to hurt someone, then be instantly overcome by sorrow and try to help them, try to stop what they have just done.
I ran upstairs to call 911, and when I got back, Bud was gone.
He left.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody runs, you think that they're running because they have something to hide. So you wonder, is that the shooter?
So this guitar and amp thing, is there any more you can tell me about that?
Actually, yeah.
He says, well, I haven't seen the guitar for a couple days. It hasn't been here, but the amp was here, and it was right there on the floor, and now it's gone. Those guys must have taken it.
Kenda wonders, could Bud Carpenter have had some unfinished business with his old roommate?
You still owe me 3 months' rent. It's not just gonna go away. That's $900.
Bud, take the kid's amp.
Damn right I'm taking your amp. Where's your guitar? I'm taking that too.
Man, I ain't giving you Is that right?
Do you know where I can find this, Bud?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Johnny had some old mail lying around. Okay.
Bud certainly doesn't want to be there when we get there, so we need to find it.
I'd be ready for anything.
We don't know what to expect. So we certainly are on edge.
He's in there.
Bud, we know you're in there. Come out with your hands up.
Is this the guy who shot Johnny Crawford 3 times? Well, we're about to find out. I have my hand on my gun when I hear that doorknob turn.
An argument occurred in an apartment between an individual who resided there and some people who came into that apartment. At least one of those persons was armed with a gun, and shots were fired during this argument. The individual who lived here was struck in the chest and the ankle by gunfire.
We're investigating the shooting of Johnny Crawford following a visit by 4 mysterious men. I've identified one of those four as Bud Carpenter, and I have ordered him out of his house.
Last chance, bud. Come out with your hands up.
Don't shoot, please. Don't shoot.
Got any weapons?
No.
Put your hands on the wall. Go and check them. It's clean.
Bud comes across as fearful of the police, fearful of everything, maybe, but he's not dangerous.
But we just want to talk about what went on over at Johnny Crawford's house.
Okay.
Mind if we come in?
Yeah, yes, sir. Come on.
Now he's calming because he knows we're not going to drag him off the porch or anything else.
So, Bud, why'd you take off from Johnny's?
I had to. If the guys that shot Johnny saw me talking to the cops, they might shoot me too.
Bud is a fearful kind of guy. He thinks everyone's his enemy. So that's a perfectly reasonable explanation to me as to why he left.
Can you tell us what happened?
I was just visiting Johnny. We were just hanging out. And those three guys showed up.
Bud says that Johnny lets him in. He goes and sits down.
What happened after they showed up?
Started just arguing about guitar and an amp.
SDR amp. Where's our guitar?
I don't know.
The conversation turned more tense and it became more heated.
You guys think you're such badasses.
Bud was kind of afraid. And so he tried to divert his attention away from what was happening there and towards the TV.
I fought numb and I freak out kind of easy. Can't be around violence.
It's okay, Bud. Take your time.
It doesn't surprise me that this fellow is a Vietnam veteran. He has the demeanor of someone who does suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. They are fearful of conflict. People raise their voice. They want to leave the room.
And they started yelling about the guitar and the amp. Whoa!
And all of a sudden, he just goes quiet.
Bud? You okay?
You could see it in his face that he is in a total state of confusion, drifting back and forth between memory and event.
A lot of vets who were in the Vietnam War era, they came home with a lot of mental scars that weren't treated because we didn't understand it at that time like we do now. And in his situation, it brought a whole flood back to him of what he had seen in the war.
And then they what?
Then he shot Johnny.
Bud stood up, sort of in a panic.
Sit down, or you're next.
But then the shooter pointed the gun at him.
All right, let's just get the amp and get out of here.
And then the fill over here has some bags under his eyes, and now he's just got black.
I don't know.
You could just see him glaze over. He put his face in his hands and he says, I just don't know. I've pressed him about as far as I can. It's time to let Bud alone.
Thanks, Bud. If you think of anything else, anything at all, let us know.
Harvey. Kept hearing the name Harvey. I don't know, maybe one of their names?
Okay, that's good, Bud. And thank you for your service.
And we left his home. I was concerned about him, but now I know something interesting. Who is Harvey?
Later that night, Kenda undertakes the grim task of informing Johnny's family of the murder.
Hello?
Hi, this is Lieutenant Kenda from the Colorado Springs Police Department. I was trying to reach Johnny Crawford's family.
This is his stepfather.
This guy says he's the stepfather to Johnny Crawford and is taken aback, of course, as you would expect.
I just don't believe it. His mother is going to be devastated.
Have you told Harvey yet?
Now my ears perk up. Who's Harvey?
Harvey is Johnny's big brother. He lives out there too.
No, I haven't spoken with him. Do you have a number I could reach him at?
He's he's kind of hard to get in touch with.
But you know he's got an aunt down in Rocky Ford he's close with.
He gives me the aunt's name and her number in Rocky Ford.
Thank you, and again, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
But when Kenda calls the aunt, he makes an unexpected connection.
Hi, I was hoping to speak to someone regarding Harvey Crawford.
Who is this?
This is Lieutenant Kenda from the Colorado Springs Police Department.
Yeah, this is Harvey.
Harvey answers the phone.
Harvey tells Kenda that he knows his brother was killed and has been expecting to hear from the police.
Harvey, I need to speak to you. Is there somewhere we can meet face to face?
Yeah.
Harvey agrees to meet us at a diner. He doesn't want us to come to his aunt's house. He doesn't want to get her involved in this. Understandable.
Okay, I know where that is. I'll see you soon. Bye.
The next morning, Kenda and Detective Arms anxiously await the arrival of Johnny Crawford's big brother, with the hope he can lead them to the shooter.
Harvey shows up. He's wearing a hoodie. It looks as if he's in some sort of disguise.
Kenda?
Yeah, Harvey. Sit down.
He's a nervous wreck.
So what do you need to tell us?
It's kind of a complicated story, but I could probably tell you everything.
Well, I like the word everything, so Harvey, you have the floor.
Johnny moved out here from West Virginia, where we're originally from. And I told him I got this carpet laying business. I was making good money at the time. Or just roll it out.
At first, Johnny did well working for Harvey.
Same thing, roll it out.
But then business began to dry up.
Johnny moved all the way out here because I told him this work. And it's like, now I can't even pay him.
It was getting more and more difficult for Harvey not only to make money for himself, but to be able to pay Johnny. And of course, you know, as the big brother, you'd feel guilty about that.
Last week I met this guy at this bar. Says he wants to strike a deal or something. I'm desperate, man.
Going through some tough times, huh?
Yeah, it's an understatement.
Listen, maybe we can help each other out.
What do you mean?
Like if you really want to make some serious money.
I gotta do something.
Let's go outside. I got something I'm gonna show you.
All right, so what are we looking at here?
It's cocaine, man. You're cool with handling drugs, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Now, it's obvious to me Harvey has no idea what he's doing.
So look, man, I'm willing to give it to you for a good deal. All right, I gotta split town. I can't have the on me.
He was willing to take a really low price for this cocaine if Harvey had the cash.
All right, we got a deal.
Yep.
30 minutes. I'll meet you back here. I just got to run to the bank. All right, we'll see you in a little bit. I mean, I saw this as a chance to try and provide for Johnny. I gave the dude everything I had.
So now Harvey finds himself the proud owner of 6 grams of cocaine. His problem is now he has no idea what to do with it.
Look, guys, I've never sold drugs before. I've never used cocaine before. I'm not into that. But luckily, a friend of mine, I mentioned my situation to.
What was the guy's name?
Oscar Redmond.
Well, there's a name we know. That's the downstairs neighbor, Oscar Redmond.
According to Harvey, a couple of days after he purchased the cocaine,
Hey, Harvey. Oh, hold on, man.
Oscar introduced him to a pair of brothers.
Got a couple of guys I'd like you to meet.
Okay.
This is Lance and Ted.
Nice to meet you, man.
We go way back.
Nice to meet you, Ted. Okay.
Yeah, we're looking to make a deal if you're interested, buddy.
They said they had a guitar and amplifier and that they might be willing to trade that guitar and amplifier for some cocaine.
All right, we'll meet you in the lobby in like 10 minutes. How's that? I'll take you up. Okay. I appreciate it. All right.
Cool. See you guys inside.
So you went through with it?
Yeah. Look, I'm a musician. I'm not a drug dealer. I know how to sell a guitar. I could sell you an amp or something, but I was desperate. I just needed the rent money for Johnny. Look, I'm telling you, Lance and Ted, they killed my brother.
Harvey, that doesn't make sense. Your brother wasn't even part of the deal. Why would they want to kill him?
Now Harvey is acting evasively, and he realizes that his story needs some backup, which he's unwilling or unable to provide.
Look, it's just a feeling I have, I'm telling you.
No, it isn't, Harvey. It's not a feeling. You know more than you're telling us. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and aside from finding you at that bottom, we're going to find everybody else as well. We're investigating the death of Johnny Crawford. We're now in contact with his brother Harvey, who says he knows who did it, but we also believe that Harvey knows why it was done. And Harvey, so far, hasn't told us.
Cut the crap, Harvey. Why would Lance and Ted have anything against Johnny?
All right, look, I didn't tell you about everything with the guy at the bar and the drug deal.
We're listening.
I'm not sure that cocaine I bought was the real deal.
And why is that?
Harvey tells us that the person sold him 6 grams of cocaine for $200. You know, this is really an unbelievably low price, and one would suspect that maybe it's of questionable quality.
A street person can see a victim from a mile away. This guy takes one look at Harvey and makes the correct assessment.
$200 ain't yours.
Certainly, the price was the first thing that should have triggered some suspicion.
Instead, Harvey thinks, hey, what a deal.
Let me take a look at what you got.
He had heard somewhere that if you put a little bit on your tongue and it gave you a numb sensation, then it would be good cocaine.
All right, we got a deal.
Harvey claims he didn't realize anything was amiss until a few days later, when Oscar Redman brought him a message from Lance and Ted.
Hey, Harvey, listen. I just saw Ted and Lance, and they're pretty pissed.
Oscar told him that Ted and Lance wanted to get the guitar and amp back, or someone was going to get shot.
Harvey, listen, this is serious.
All right, look, just forget about it. Could care less. I thought it was just a bunch of crap. A few days go by, I don't hear a word about it. I sell the guitar, get the money.
Sometimes stories, true stories, are bizarre because you assume a certain level of intelligence. Harvey has been mercifully spared of the ravages of intelligence. When threats of shooting comes forward,
don't worry about it. They're harmless.
His reaction is to ignore this and it'll all somehow go away.
Kenda wonders, did Lance and Ted come looking for Harvey? And when they couldn't find him, decide to take their vengeance out on Johnny instead?
I just feel really bad. It's like I'm indirectly responsible for my brother's death.
Well, you're wrong there, Harvey. You are directly responsible for your brother's death. Johnny has nothing to do with this. His only crime is that A, he is related to Harvey, and B, he is home when they arrive.
Okay, Harvey. Where do we find Lance and Ted?
How about the third guy that was with him? Big muscular guy.
Guys, I don't know. Oscar probably does. He and the brothers grew up together in Nebraska or something. That's all I know.
Now, that makes sense to me because Redman introduces these brothers to Harvey in the first place.
All right, we appreciate the information. We'll be in touch.
So now it's time to talk to Oscar Redman again. The first time we encountered him, we thought he was nothing more than an uninvolved witness. Now we know he had everything to do with it.
There are always going to be those people who will tell you as little as they think they can get away with. So it's pretty common for us to have to go back and talk to somebody 2 or 3 times before we might get the full story.
When Kenda and Arms reconnect with Oscar at his apartment, they make their intentions crystal clear.
Oh, hey, detectives.
Oscar, we need to talk.
And his face falls.
I think there's a few things you need to tell us about who shot Johnny Crawford.
He has the look of someone who realizes the cat is out of the bag.
Well, I introduced Ted and Lance to Harvey.
He says that I was just trying to be friendly. They both had a need for each other.
We know there was a third guy with the brothers the night of that shooting. Big muscular fella. You know who that is?
That was probably Ralph Spencer. Dude's huge.
It's obvious during this conversation that Oscar knows the brothers really well. He knows them so well, he even knows Ralph Spencer as the only big guy that they associate with.
Lance and Ted. What are their last names?
Nixon.
Write down everything you know.
He knows that Lance and Ted are from the same town he's from in Nebraska. He knows where they live. He knows what kind of car they drive. He knows the car has Nebraska plates.
I'm so sorry this happened. I knew they said they would shoot somebody. I just didn't believe it.
We'll be in touch.
We now know where Ted and Lance Nixon live, and that is where we are headed to.
As Kenda and his team close in on the trailer, it may be a matter of minutes before the case is wrapped up.
Police, open up!
There is no response.
Ready?
The door is locked, and we kick it in.
Police, let me see your hands!
We check every room of the trailer.
We're clear. Clear.
Nobody's there.
Yeah. There's a ramp.
Yeah.
But there is a guitar amplifier. All this trouble for this amplifier, and they leave it behind.
Let's go.
You're always hopeful you can turn this in a hurry, but now they're in the wind, so this has just become a lot more complicated. But turn it we will. We are now in pursuit of Ted and Lance Nixon for the murder of Johnny Crawford. The fact that these people are recent arrivals from the state of Nebraska, the likelihood is great as Nebraska is where they will go. We have listing information on their car. We know the plate number, and we put it on all points bulletin, but we have no idea how successful that's going to be.
Meanwhile, detectives turn their attention to the muscle-bound man with them the night of the murder.
We don't know where the Nixon brothers are, but we do have Ralph Spencer, so let's go find Ralph and find out what his story is.
Ralph Spencer?
Yeah.
We're with the Colorado Springs Police Department. Mind if we ask you a few questions?
Yeah, sure. But I gotta get to work.
He looks like he's a little bit hungover. His eyes are a red road map. Whatever Ralph did the prior night, he did a lot of it.
Mr. Spencer, what were you doing at Johnny Crawford's apartment last night?
Who?
Johnny Crawford?
I don't know that name. I was at the Candlelight Bar all night last night.
Let's try this again. What were you doing at Johnny's apartment with Lance and Ted Nixon?
Listen, I don't know those names. And I gotta go. I gotta get to work.
Okay. You wouldn't mind if we took a picture real quick, would you?
Sure, I guess.
What's inside?
Even though he denies knowing Johnny Crawford.
Come on, Ralph. Give me a smile.
With his photograph, I can show that to witnesses, and the next conversation we have will be an entirely different playing field.
Then,
Dispatch to Kenda.
Go for Kenda.
Yes, we've located the Nixon brothers' vehicle. It was abandoned in Nebraska.
The Nebraska State Highway Patrol have found the vehicle wanted in the murder case. It is abandoned a short distance from their hometown. It's obvious to me that they got in touch with their family. So now it's time to call their mother.
Yes. Can I speak with Mrs. Nixon?
Yes, this is Mrs. Nixon.
We talked with their mother, really telling her how important it was for her sons to turn themselves in because they were in the computer considered armed and dangerous.
Have you seen them lately?
We've heard they're up your way.
Well, I don't really know where they are right now.
The hopes were that that message would get conveyed to the boys and that they should surrender themselves to police so that nothing would happen to them.
Mothers love their children, no matter what they've done. And you play on the emotion of mom to get who you want off the street.
If you could get in touch with them, Mrs. Nixon, we'd appreciate it.
Like any mother, she was concerned for her boys.
Yeah, I'll let you know, Detective, if I hear from them.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Nixon.
Bye-bye.
And she didn't want them to end up in a shootout out on the roadside with police trying to arrest them.
Within the hour,
Oh, shoot. Oh, we surrender.
Ted and Lance Nixon walk into their local police department.
Guys, have a seat over here.
The desk officer basically ran their names in the system, and they were placed under arrest.
I, of course, want to interrogate them. So Skip Arms is sent to Nebraska.
Officer, Detective Skip Arms from the Colorado Springs Police Department.
Yeah.
I believe you have a Ted and Lance Nixon for me.
Yeah, give me just a second, I'll get them for you.
Sure.
Here they are.
You can take us back to Colorado, but we ain't got nothing to say.
Okay, let's go.
We were certainly disappointed, and it is kind of frustrating, but you have to acknowledge that that is their right, not to talk.
But when Kenda picks them up at the Colorado Springs airport, the brothers seem to have a change of heart.
Can I ask you a question about my case?
It's very hard for people to stay quiet. It is not uncommon for people who have been on a long plane trip to start to get comfortable and start to make statements.
I mean, if we felt threatened or that our lives were in danger, what if someone had a weapon? It could be considered self-defense, right?
You guys invoked your right to remain silent.
Given this circumstance, I cannot respond. This is a spontaneous statement made by the arrestee. In the law, it's referred to as re justi, a Latin phrase that ultimately means spontaneous remark. That's what he's done.
However, given that, if the suspect continues to talk and it's not at your direction, there's no obligation to tell them to be quiet. And so we will sit back and listen to anything they have to say, and that's perfectly legal.
Can I just tell you my side of the story, and then you can tell me if it's self-defense?
You're free to say whatever you want.
Suddenly, things are getting very interesting. We are now in a position where we have the Nixon brothers under arrest for first-degree murder. We did not get the interrogation I wanted, but what we did get is that their argument for their defense is self-defense.
Lance Nixon continues to volunteer details of what he claims happened in Johnny's apartment.
I mean, we were nice, we weren't pushy. We just went over there to get our guitar and amp back. But his brother was there, and he was just crazy. He pulled a knife on us. So we didn't have a choice. Ted had to shoot him.
What he's saying makes no sense. After Johnny pulled the knife and after he was shot, he put the knife back in the scabbard and locked it down with a snap cover.
Are you gonna say anything?
I'm going to invoke my right to remain silent. Let's go.
Kenda may not be getting the full story, but there's one important detail that's been straightened out.
I wasn't sure who pulled the trigger. and Lance just handed me that in a silver platter. Ted had to shoot him because he had a knife. So Ted is the shooter, not Lance.
Now, all Kenda needs is for a witness to confirm or deny if Lance and Ted are justified in claiming self-defense.
Ralph Spencer goes into the apartment with the Nixon brothers. So that's why it was important to get his version of events.
But Ralph Spencer isn't talking. So before Kenda can get him to open up, he needs some help from Johnny's roommate, Paul Chappelle.
Okay, Paul. I know it was quick the night you saw those guys at the apartment, but I still need you to look at the photos.
We brought in Mr. Chappelle to look at a photo lineup that contained a picture of Ralph Spencer.
That's him.
In less than 2 seconds, he put his finger on it and said, "That's him right there."
You sure?
I'm certain he was just standing there, but that's him.
Okay, good.
All right, thanks for coming in.
No problem.
Once Paul was able to identify Ralph as being the third person there, we figure we have leverage now to really get him to talk as to what happened in the apartment.
See, you've been identified by a witness as being in Johnny's apartment the night he was killed. It's time to talk, Mr. Spencer.
Ralph reacts like, "Oh, God, they know everything." "Yeah, we kind of do, Ralph."
I had no clue those fools were going to do that. I didn't even know Ted had a gun until he pulled it out of his back pocket.
Tell me what happened.
As Ralph continues, he begins to paint a detailed picture of the events leading up to Johnny Crawford's death.
Ted and Lance were telling me about this deal that went bad, and they were asking me for some help. They were going to go back to this apartment where the deal was made.
What the hell do you guys want?
Where's Harvey?
I don't know. I haven't seen him for a few days. Even if I did know, I wouldn't tell you.
Ralph insists he just stood and watched while the Nixons argued.
I see our amp. Where's our guitar?
I don't know. Maybe Harvey has it.
So where's Harvey?
You guys deaf? Said I didn't know.
Reading between the lines with Ralph's story, Johnny's being a little 19-year-old smartass. He didn't realize how serious this is.
This kid's talking smack, and it's making Ted and Lance even more crazy.
Were there any weapons out at this point?
Just a small knife on the table.
Ralph says that Lance sees the knife sitting in a sheath with it snapped over on the table next to the chair, and Lance picked it up and said,
"Mr. Tough Guy here's got a knife."
Okay, it's not even my knife, dude, all right? Calm down.
You gonna tell us where Harvey is or not?
Oh, man, you think you're such badasses.
Ralph says he sees Ted reach in the back pocket of his jeans with his right hand, and he pulls out a small pistol.
What the hell, Ted? Jesus!
Bud gets up to try to help his friend, Ralph says.
Sit down!
Or you're next.
And Ted points the gun at his face.
All right, let's just get the amp and get out of here.
Honestly, I didn't know what the hell to do. I just wanted to get out of there. They went one way, I went the other.
Where'd you go?
I just took off to the Candlelight Bar. I sat there and I drank and I drank and I drank, just trying to get it out of my head.
Ralph's story makes perfect sense. It fits with the physical evidence. It fits with the emotion that you find in these violent crimes committed by young people. He was there for the intimidation factor and had no knowledge of what was going to transpire.
Ralph, I'm going to release you without charges. You're free to go.
He shook my hand with both his hands. Thank you so much. Goodbye, Ralph. Thank you for being honest. While
Ralph walks away a free man, the Nixon brothers meet a different fate.
After several months of court proceedings, Ted Nixon pled guilty to second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 14 years in the Colorado State Penitentiary. Lance Nixon was allowed to plead to a lesser charge of accessory to a crime because he didn't know what his brother was going to do when they went to the apartment.
We'll never really know what caused Ted to snap. They didn't know Johnny. I mean, it wasn't like they had a beef with him. Why would you do something like that?
What are the odds? Two sets of brothers, one set from Nebraska, one set from West Virginia, flitting around the country, getting involved in various schemes, and a death results from all of this. And what has been gained? Certainly nothing. And what has been lost? A 19-year-old life that never saw 20.
They say Detroit in the late 90s never really slept. It twitched, it shivered, it kept one eye open, watching the dark. But on a wet November night in 1998, the city didn't just watch, it listened, to sirens, to static, to a voice on the police radio repeating the same words again and again like a broken headline. Female victim, unknown, possible homicide, alley off Gratiot and Kirby, all units copy. The rain hit the asphalt like a drum roll. Somewhere a TV blared late-night news, but the real breaking story was bleeding out in the shadows. No name, no ID, no family screaming in the background, just a body on the cold ground, half illuminated by a flickering street lamp that made everything look like a bad videotape. She lay twisted, one arm reaching toward a brick wall smeared with old graffiti, as if she'd tried to write something on the bricks before her fingers went still. No gun, no obvious weapon, no shell casings. The alley smelled of gasoline, wet cardboard, and iron. The officer who rolled the body over later said he never forgot the eyes. Open, glassy, like they were still trying to warn him. This wasn't a rich neighborhood. It was the kind of block the city forgot about when the factories closed and the jobs evaporated. Boarded up storefronts with metal grates, liquor store neon buzzing even after midnight, a payphone hanging by one screw, receiver missing. People here minded their own business because minding someone else's could get you killed. But that night, red and blue lights painted the walls and everyone suddenly had something to say. A woman on the third floor claimed she heard a scream. A man on the corner swore there were two cars, not one. Down the block, someone slammed a window shut as if closing it could shut out what had just happened. The first detectives on scene were tired before they arrived. It was the fourth violent call that shift. They stepped under the police tape with coffee breath and rain-damp coats, notebooks already open, eyes moving fast. They checked for drag marks. There were none. She hadn't been dumped. She'd gone down right here. They checked the trash cans, kicked aside crushed beer bottles, watched the patterns the blood made as it mixed with the rainwater and ran in thin red rivers toward the gutter. One detective, older with a face like old leather, muttered under his breath, "She didn't expect this." The rookie beside him asked, "How do you know?" The older man didn't answer. Her clothes told a story before her lips could. Jeans, cheap sneakers, thin jacket not made for November wind. No jewelry except for a small chain around her neck, broken, the pendant missing. No purse, no wallet. The medical examiner knelt beside the body, gloved hands hovering, eyes narrowing. No obvious stab wounds, no gunshot entry. There was bruising along the jaw, the throat, the way her tongue sat in her mouth. Something about the way the capillaries had burst in her eyes. He didn't like what it suggested. Strangulation, close, personal, someone's hands where they didn't belong. The rain picked up, threatening to wash away what little evidence there was. A crime tech yelled for tarps, for flash photos, for anyone to move faster. Flash. The alley lit bright for a second, turning the scene into a frozen crime bulletin. Flash. Wet bricks, a smear on the wall, the girl's hair spread like a black halo in dirty water. Flash. The detective staring straight into the camera by accident, eyes tired, jaws clenched. Somewhere downtown, dispatch logged the call with a dry code. Homicide, female, approximate age, late teens to early 20s, case number assigned, another file in a system already choking on bad nights. Back at the precinct, under buzzing fluorescent lights that made everyone look guilty, the whiteboard filled quickly. Unknown female, Gratiot Kirby. A sketch of the alley, a rough outline of the body's position, the word motive underlined twice. One detective scrawled possible angles in handwriting that slanted hard like he was angry at the marker. Robbery, wrong place, wrong time, domestic, drug-related, no witnesses willing to put their names on a statement, no surveillance cameras in the alley. Too early for DNA to be the magic word everyone now thinks it always was. In 1998, it was still slow, still expensive, still something you hoped for, not counted on. The autopsy confirmed what the alley had hinted: death by asphyxiation, strangulation, most likely with hands, not a rope, not a wire. That detail mattered. It meant the killer had to be close enough to feel her breath, to hear the sounds she made when her airway closed. It meant this wasn't some distant, cold shot from across the street. It was up close and personal. Fingernails had traces of skin under them, defensive wounds on her forearms. She had fought. Hard. The lab techs scraped what they could, labeled it, stored it. Evidence bags sealed with hope and tape. The problem was simple and brutal. You can't solve a murder if you don't even know who died. Fingerprints were run. Nothing. No priors. No records. Missing persons reports were checked, but in a city bleeding people every year, the list was long, faces blurring into each other. A few families came in, heard rumors, looked at the photos. Some left crying tears of relief. It wasn't their daughter. Some left with their hands shaking, hearts broken. It was, but not this case. This girl remained Jane Doe, just 2 words on a file, colder than any slab in the morgue. Still, detectives knocked on doors. They talked to kids on the corner who pretended they didn't care. They walked into barbershops where the clippers fell silent as they showed the composite drawing. Does she look familiar? You ever see her around here? Head shakes. A few too fast no's. A few glances toward the door, toward the street, toward nowhere. In the back of a small diner that smelled like burnt coffee and fried eggs, an older woman who cleaned the night shift paused, squinted at the sketch, and whispered, "I seen her once, maybe twice, always walking fast, like she was late for something, or running from someone." The press didn't pounce right away. It was Detroit. Violence competed for airtime. One more body and one more alley didn't lead the evening news. But when the police quietly put out a call to the public for help identifying the victim, a sketch, a description, a clean clinical plea, the story caught. Unknown young woman found murdered on city's east side. Community shaken after Jane Doe homicide. The words cold case weren't used yet, not officially, not in 1998. Back then, everything still felt like it might crack if someone just pushed hard enough. Days bled into weeks. Leads went nowhere. Tips flooded the hotline, most of them trash. A man insisted he'd seen the victim in a bar 2 nights before the murder, but he changed his story 3 times. A neighbor claimed he heard a male voice arguing with her in the alley, but couldn't describe the man beyond wearing a dark jacket. Dark jacket, male, city of nearly 1 million people. The description fit half of Detroit. A rumor about a jealous boyfriend, a whisper about a drug debt, a name scribbled on a notepad, circled, then crossed out. The board at the precinct stayed full, but the space next to suspect remained empty. In the middle of all that noise came one quiet detail, a small, almost invisible tattoo on the victim's ankle noticed by a nurse at the morgue as she helped prepare the body. Not big, not fancy, just a cheap black outline of a star, slightly crooked, not gang-related, not professional, the kind of tattoo a girl might get in someone's kitchen for $20 and a promise. The detectives added it to the description. Small star tattoo on right ankle. They showed it around high schools, youth shelters, halfway houses. One counselor stopped, frowned, and said, "You know, we had a girl last year, runaway, talked about wanting to get a star tattoo when she turned 18, but she left before that. No name, no file that matched, just another ghost." Out on the streets, the story twisted. It stopped being unknown girl killed in alley and became something else. Mysterious girl with the star on her ankle. The Star Girl. Kids whispered it like an urban legend. "Don't walk down that alley after midnight," they said, "or the Star Girl will grab your throat." Parents told their daughters to come home before dark. Some nights, people swore they saw a figure standing where the body had been, just out of the light, watching. The human brain hates a void. It fills it with whatever it can. Fear, rumor, myth. Inside the department, myth wasn't enough. Paperwork piled up. New cases demanded attention. Detectives transferred, retired, burned out. The files stayed in the same cabinet. Drawers heavy with unanswered questions. Over time, the labels changed. Open investigation became pending. Pending slipped into inactive, not closed, never officially closed, just resting, waiting. Somewhere, the bagged fingernail scrapings sat in a refrigerated room next to dozens of other tiny plastic containers, each one holding a piece of a story nobody finished reading. The city moved on. New headlines, new crises. Factories shuttered. Crime shifted shape. Technology advanced. The alley off Gratiot and Kirby got a new layer of graffiti, a new layer of trash, a new set of footsteps at night. But for the people who lived on that block in 1998, for the patrol officers who walked it, for the rookie who caught his first real homicide there, that patch of wet asphalt never went back to normal. It stayed marked. Not by chalk outlines or yellow tape, but by memory. By the unshakable feeling that something was wrong and unfinished. Years would pass, evidence would sit, faces on the original case would age. The sketch of the girl with the star on her ankle would yellow at the edges, pinned to a bulletin board, no one dusted anymore. And somewhere in this city that never quite heals, a killer would keep walking. No arrest, no trial, no mugshot splashed across the news, just silence. Just the quiet, steady heartbeat of a question that refuses to die. How does a girl vanish into a file number, into a cold cabinet, into a city's blind spot, and never come back out? Because this is Detroit, 1998, a cold case that everyone swore they'd crack, a story that should have had an ending, a docket stamped, a verdict read, a line drawn under it, solved. But under the flickering lights of the precinct, under the rain that night in the alley, under the weight of all the years since, one truth has refused to fade. Whatever the file may one day say in neat black ink, nothing about this feels solved at all. The file could have disappeared. That's the truth. It could have slipped under a desk, been misfiled in the wrong drawer, buried under a stack of robberies and carjackings and domestic calls. In a city drowning in chaos, a nameless girl in a nameless alley was just one more scream in the night. But it didn't disappear, because one detective wouldn't let it. His name was Frank Calder, homicide, mid-40s in 1998, hair already thinning, tie always a little crooked. He wasn't the best shot on the force, not the fastest runner, not the guy they called when they needed a SWAT raid. He was the one they called when a case started to slip away, the one who took files home, the one whose kitchen table was more paperwork than plates. When the Jane Doe from Gratiot and Kirby landed on his desk, he didn't know yet that it would follow him for decades. He just saw the photos, the alley, the eyes, the broken chain on her neck, and somewhere behind the numbness that comes with doing this job too long, something sparked. He started where every detective is supposed to start. With the victim. Who was she? Where did she sleep? Who did she trust? Who wanted her dead? But the problem was the same brick wall over and over. No name, no address, no school, no job. The city had swallowed her whole and left no footprint. Frank walked the neighborhood until his shoes hurt. He flashed the sketch at bus stops, in corner stores, at methadone clinics, at the emergency room where nurses shook their heads and said, "We see too many faces, detective. They blur." He bought coffee for kids on the sidewalk and asked about a girl with a star tattoo. Some shrugged. Some said they'd heard of her. No one knew much. She was a rumor even when she was alive. Still, small things trickled in. A boy said he'd seen her around a cheap motel off the freeway, always alone, always looking over her shoulder. A bartender remembered a girl who sat at the end of the bar, not drinking, just picking at a bowl of peanuts and staring through the TV. A taxi driver claimed he took a young woman matching her description to the east side one night, to an address that turned out later to be fake. Every story ended the same way. She walked away into the dark, and no one followed. The lab came back with a few more details, but nothing that screamed a name. Brown hair, natural, no dye. A faint scar on her left forearm, like a childhood accident with glass or a kitchen knife. No drugs in her system, at least not at a level that mattered. Stomach contents, cheap fries, maybe from one of the greasy spoons that dotted the block. Time of death placed her in that alley, somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m. The city was noisy then. Clubs closing, bars spilling out their last customers, cars cruising slowly with music too loud. Somewhere in all that, she lost her breath and no one saw. One piece of evidence bothered Frank more than the others. It was so small it almost got missed. On the broken chain around her neck near the snapped clasp, there was a smear of something dark and sticky. Not blood, not oil. A lab tech scraped it, tested it. The report came back. Cheap black enamel, the kind used to coat dime store pendants. Whatever she'd been wearing had been painted, coated, made to look like something more valuable than it was. The pendant itself was gone, ripped off, taken, maybe by the killer, maybe by whoever found her first, a souvenir or a panic grab. Either way, Frank circled it on the report. Missing pendant, possible key. He went hunting for it, pawn shops, street vendors, flea markets under the overpass. He asked about small black enamel charms, stars, hearts, crosses, anything that fit. Most clerks stared blankly. One guy behind a glass case full of fake gold laughed and said, "Detective, half this city wears cheap enamel. You're trying to find a single raindrop in a storm." Still, Frank checked. He made notes. They filled pages. Pressure mounted. His lieutenant wanted progress. The media had moved on, but the department hadn't. Nobody liked a Jane Doe on the books. It made them look sloppy, ineffective. It whispered a question nobody wanted to answer out loud. If we can't even name the dead, what are we doing here? Weeks turned to months, and the whiteboard in the squad room changed. New names, new cases, new victims. The girl in the alley stayed in a corner, her sketch slowly edged out by fresher horrors. Then, a near break. It came from a place nobody expected, a traffic stop. An officer pulled over a car for rolling through a stop sign not far from the crime scene 2 months after the murder. The driver was jittery, eyes darting, license expired. In the passenger seat, a young man around 20, nervous, fingers tapping against his thigh. The cop asked them to step out, standard. During the pat-down, he noticed scratch marks on the passenger's forearms. Fresh, thin, parallel, like fingernails. The cop asked a simple question. "Where'd you get these?" The kid mumbled something about a bar fight. The officer didn't buy it. In the back of the car, under an old sweatshirt, they found a small plastic bag with a broken necklace chain and a black enamel pendant shaped like a star. The officer froze for half a second. Star, girl, alley. It snapped together in his head. He called it in. Within an hour, Frank was at the station, staring at the pendant under the harsh interview room light. Cheap black enamel, chipped at the edges, chain broken. He didn't say a word, but inside, something in him roared. This was it. This had to be it. The passenger's name was Damon Price, local, minor record, shoplifting, disorderly conduct, possession of weed, nothing major, nothing that screamed killer, but his eyes were wrong, too flat, too calm, or maybe that's what Frank needed to see. He went into the interview room with a file under his arm and a tape recorder in his hand, the way he'd done 100 times before, but this time felt electric. "Nice jewelry," Frank said, dropping a photo of the pendant on the table. Damon shrugged. "Just something I found." "Found where?" "On the street." Frank slid a crime scene photo across. The alley, the body, the broken chain. "This street?" Damon looked once, blinked, looked away. "I don't know what that is." Frank leaned in. "Wrong answer. You're walking around with a star pendant off a chain that looks exactly like the one ripped off a dead girl's neck 2 blocks from where I pulled you over. You want to try again?" Damon shifted in his chair, licked his lips. "I told you. I found it, a month ago, by the bus stop. Didn't know it was connected to anything." They pressed him for hours. Where was he the night of the murder? Who did he hang with? Did he know a girl with a star tattoo? He stuck to his story. Found it. Didn't know. Never saw her. Tight. Controlled. A public defender sat beside him, face blank, filing objections like clockwork. Eventually, as the clock ticked and the tape spun, the holes in the case started to show. No witness put Damon near the alley that night. No fingerprints of his at the scene. The scratches on his arms could have come from anywhere. The pendant matched the description, but not with absolute certainty. There were no initials on it, no unique engraving, nothing that tied it conclusively to the victim. The chain from the crime scene had been broken and contaminated by rain and handling. The link pattern was close, but close doesn't hold up in court. The prosecutor's office wanted more, a confession, a witness, DNA. DNA. The word hung in the room like a promise and a threat. In 1998, it was an emerging weapon, but it wasn't instant. It took time, money, lab space. Frank pushed anyway. He requested testing on the material under Jane Doe's fingernails. He had them swab Damon. Cheek, quick, done. Samples labeled, logged, sent. "We'll compare," the lab tech said. "But don't expect miracles. There's a backlog." A backlog. Thousands of open cases, closed cases, rapes, assaults, murders stacked up for testing, evidence refrigerators overflowing, boxes on boxes. The lab was drowning. This case, this nameless girl with no family screaming on the courthouse steps, wasn't going to the top of the pile. Education budgets and police overtime sucked up headlines. Forensic funding didn't. The calendar flipped. Winter melted into a gray, muddy spring. Still no answer. Meanwhile, the streets kept talking. A rumor spread that Damon had bragged once in a bar about showing some girl her place. Someone claimed he'd seen Damon arguing with a young woman near the bus stop weeks before the murder. A neighbor said she heard shouting in the alley on the night of the homicide, followed by a car door slam. When asked if she could identify the voice, she hesitated. "Sounded like a young guy," she said. A pause. Could have been him. Might not. Memory is a shaky witness. Frank kept going. He pulled Damon's phone records, such as they were in those days. Home numbers, payphones, no cell tower maps to draw clean lines. He checked coworkers, friends, ex-girlfriends. One ex said he was controlling. One said he was sweet. One said he scared her. They all had alibis. None put him in that alley. Weeks stretched into months. The DA's office started to pull back. Off the record, one prosecutor said, "Frank, I don't have it. A pendant and some bad vibes don't make a murder trial. You want me to put this in front of a jury? They'll chew me alive." They declined to charge. Damon walked out of the station that day, free, pendant confiscated, eyes flashing with something that might have been anger or triumph. He leaned close to Frank and said quietly, "You got the wrong guy, detective." Then he smiled. "You'll see." The next morning, the whiteboard in the squad room changed again. A red line through Damon's name. Below it, in block letters, no charges, insufficient evidence. Back to square one. The case grew heavier. It wasn't just a file now. It was a weight on Frank's desk, on his shoulders, on his sleep. He brought the sketch home and pinned it to his refrigerator, ignoring the way his wife looked at it every time she opened the door. He found himself driving past the alley even when he didn't need to, staring at the exact spot the body had been, the stains long washed away. He memorized every brick, every crack in the pavement, every rusted pipe and overflowing dumpster, as if the scene might suddenly speak. But scenes don't speak, files don't whisper. Time does one thing very well: it erases. By the end of 1999, the case was officially reclassified. Not solved, not closed, just cold. A word that sounds clinical on paper but feels like a punch in the chest when you're the one who has to sign off on it. Cold. As in no new leads, no active suspect, no resources left to burn. The Jane Doe from Gratiot and Kirby became a cold case, another statistic in a city that had too many. The community didn't hold a vigil. There were no candlelit marches, no hashtag campaigns, no viral posts. It was 1999. The internet was slow, loud, full of beeps and static. Justice didn't trend. But in that neighborhood, people remembered. They kept their kids in after dark a little longer. They walked faster past that alley. They muttered "Stargirl" under their breath like a warning. The story grew twisted edges. Some said she'd been a cop's daughter. Some said she was a runaway from another state. Some said she was never identified because people were afraid to speak her name. In the evidence room, the box with her case number on it got slid farther back on the shelf. Dust gathered on the cardboard. Inside, the plastic vials of scrapings sat in the cold, sealed off from air and time. Tiny frozen secrets waiting for someone to remember they existed. Frank didn't forget. He aged. The city aged with him. By the time the new century really dug its claws into Detroit, his hair was more gray than brown, his knees hurt in the winter, and newer detectives joked that he was old school, half with respect, half with impatience. The crime world evolved, gangs shifted, drugs changed, guns got cheaper, technology crept into everything, from dispatch to databases. But the girl in the alley stayed 1998 forever. Every now and then, a new piece of information would float across his desk. A tip from an inmate. A letter from someone claiming they knew who killed her. A drunk confession that evaporated when the man sobered up. Frank chased each one. Every time it led nowhere. Every time he went home more tired. He could have let it go. Lots of detectives do. You can't carry every ghost. The job will crush you. But he didn't. Because some nights, in the dark quiet of his small house, he'd wake up hearing nothing but his own breath and one question pounding in his head like a drum. If this was your daughter, would you accept cold case as an answer? Years later, when journalists would ask him what changed, what finally broke the dam on Detroit's 1998 Jane Doe, he'd shake his head and say the same thing every time. It wasn't a miracle. It was science finally catching up to a promise we made that night in the rain. Because while the city moved on, something else was happening in the background. In white labs with humming machines and quiet technicians, DNA was getting faster, stronger, smarter, databases were growing. Old evidence was being thawed back out, retested, re-examined. And in one chilled room in Detroit behind a metal door that stuck every time it got humid, a tech would one day slide out a box with a faded label, crack the seal on a small plastic tube, and place 27-year-old scrapings from under a dead girl's fingernails into a machine that hadn't existed when she died. A machine that wouldn't care that she had no name, wouldn't care that the case was stamped cold. It would only care about one thing: the truth written in blood and skin. But in 1998, nobody knew that yet. All they knew was an alley, a star, a missing pendant, and a file that refused to close. The city had changed by the time someone touched that box again. The skyline looked different. Some factories were silent, others torn down. Empty lots that once held houses now held weeds and forgotten toys. Detroit had been declared dead, reborn, written off, rediscovered. But in the basement of police headquarters, where the air smelled like dust and old paper, the past hadn't gone anywhere. It just waited on metal shelves, lined up in cardboard coffins with labels instead of names. They called it the Cold Case Initiative, not because the cases were new, but because the pressure was. Grants, federal money, political promises. We will bring answers to families who have waited too long. Cameras flashed in front of a podium, while upstairs, a small team of detectives and analysts stared at a list of file numbers as long as a grocery receipt. Somebody had decided this was the moment, this was the year. Old evidence, new science. It sounded clean in speeches. In the basement, it looked like work. Detective Lena Morales was the kind of cop who didn't believe in ghosts but knew they were everywhere anyway. Early 40s, sharp eyes, dark hair pulled back tightly like she didn't have time for anything loose. She'd grown up in a Detroit that smelled different, had joined the force when everyone said she was crazy to do it, and ended up in homicide because she liked puzzles more than she feared the dark. When the cold case unit needed bodies, she didn't hesitate. Maybe it was ego, maybe it was duty. Maybe it was that one question every good detective asks themselves eventually: what's left undone? On her second day in the unit, the evidence tech rolled out a cart stacked with boxes, brown, faded, some corners soft with age. He handed her a clipboard, tapped a line with his pen. Start with these: high priority, unidentified victims, potential DNA, no resolution. Her fingers slid down the list. Numbers, codes, locations, then she saw it. Female, unknown, Gratiot Kirby, 1998. Her eyes paused. A Jane Doe older than some of the rookies upstairs. A case that had seen 3 mayors, 4 police chiefs, 2 economic collapses. She tightened her grip on the clipboard. Pull that one first, she said. The box was heavier than it looked, cardboard worn, tape yellowed. Someone had written the case number by hand in thick black marker, the ink bleeding at the edges. Inside, the past was preserved in plastic and paper. Scene photos, reports, an autopsy summary. The scrapings. Tiny vials with labels that were still legible, neatly printed, the handwriting steady. At the bottom of the stack, a photocopy of a sketch. A girl's face, soft, serious, with a small star drawn at her ankle in the corner. Someone's shorthand, someone's way of not forgetting. Lena sat at the table, flipping through. She'd seen 100 crime scenes, 100 bodies, but there was something about the wet shine of that alley in the photos that crawled under her skin. The street lamp, the brick wall, the broken chain on the victim's neck. It felt like a movie still, frozen mid-scream. She read everything. The interviews, the failed lead on Damon Price, the prosecutor's refusal, the note in a different pen, margin scribbled on the lab request form. DNA samples collected, limited, test when possible. Underneath, a signature, Detective Frank Calder. She knew the name. Everyone who'd lasted in homicide did. He'd been around forever, the story went. Old school. Retired now. Somewhere in the suburbs, probably, with bad knees and a lawn he mowed too early in the morning. She wondered if he ever stopped thinking about this girl. Probably not. The good ones never did. Down the hall, the lab had changed more than the city. What used to be a cramped room with hand-labeled tubes and humming refrigerators was now a clean, bright space full of machines that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Rows of sequencers, monitors, technicians in gloves moving with calm precision. Lena walked in holding the vials in a clear evidence bag like they were relics. The lab supervisor, a woman with calm eyes and a clipped voice, examined the label. 1998, she said softly. Someone kept this cold. That's good. Really good. She held the vial up to the light. The contents looked like nothing. A fleck, a shadow, a memory. We can run it, she said. No guarantees. Age, degradation, contamination. But the new systems are sensitive. We'll try to pull a profile. How long? Lena asked. The supervisor gave a tight half smile. Faster than it would have been back then. Slower than you want. Waiting is its own kind of violence in homicide. You sit, you pace, you flip through the same pages until the letters blur. Lena dug deeper into the file while the machines whispered and hummed in the lab. She mapped the block around the alley, comparing old photos to newer maps. Businesses closed, new ones opened, some lots gone completely. She tracked down the officers who'd been first on scene, those who were still alive. Some remembered the smell of the rain, the way the girl's hand had been reaching toward the wall. Others remembered nothing. Too many bodies, too many nights. She found a note in the file that made her stop. One witness, a teenage boy at the time, had described seeing the victim earlier that week near a youth shelter. She looked lost, he'd said, like she didn't know if she was coming or going. On a separate sheet, someone had scribbled a name of a shelter that no longer existed, closed in the early 2000s. Records scattered, staff moved on, kids grown up, vanished, locked up, or buried. Lena tracked down a woman who had worked at that shelter, now living across the state, retired. They met in a diner off the highway, the kind with sticky menus and coffee that never stopped pouring. The woman's hair was white now, but her eyes were sharp. When Lena laid the photocopy of the sketch on the table, those eyes filled with something heavier than recognition. I remember her, the woman said quietly. Not well, just the feeling of her. What feeling? Lena asked. The woman traced the outline of the sketch with a fingertip. She was polite. Too polite. Like someone who'd learned that being quiet kept you from getting hit. She didn't stay long, maybe a week. I think she signed in under a fake name. Girls did that sometimes. Said she was from down south. Never said where exactly. We tried to get her to see a counselor. She always said she was leaving soon, that someone was going to come get her, but no one came. Did she mention family, a boyfriend? A sister maybe, or a cousin. She used both words. Someone older who got out. That's what she said. She got out. I'm next. The woman's voice tightened. One night she just didn't come back. We figured she'd moved on, like so many did. So many still do. Back in the city, the alley off Gratiot and Kirby looks smaller than it did in the photos. Time will do that to a place. Shrink it, drain it. A new layer of graffiti screamed in bright colors over the old bricks. The payphone was gone. The neon liquor store sign had been replaced with a digital one, brighter but colder. Lena stood exactly where the body had been found, file in her hand, listening to the hiss of traffic and the low bass thump from a car at the corner. In daylight, the alley was just concrete and brick. In her mind, the rain never stopped. She pictured the girl walking here, alone, hands in her jacket pockets, breath white in the November air. Did she know the man who followed her into the dark? Did she turn when he called her name? Did she hear footsteps and speed up, heart racing, thinking of reaching the corner, the light, the noise, safety? Or did she think she was meeting someone she trusted, only to feel fingers on her throat a second later? A voice crackled in her earpiece, the lab supervisor. Detective Morales, we've got something. You might want to come down. In the lab, the monitor glowed with lines, numbers, peaks. To most people, it would have looked meaningless. To the techs, it was language. The supervisor pointed. We were able to generate a partial DNA profile from the scrapings. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to run through the national database. Perp? Lena asked, throat tight. Not yet. The supervisor tapped the screen again. First, we ran the victim's DNA to see if she hits on any missing persons or familial matches. Back in '98, databases were tiny. Now, she gestured to the monitor, bigger pond, better nets. And we got a ping, not a direct one, a partial familial hit. Someone related to her is in the system. The words felt electric. For 2 decades, the victim had no name, no birthday, no history. Now, suddenly, she had something more than Jane Doe. She had blood that matched someone else's blood. Lena leaned closer. Who? A woman in Ohio, arrested 3 years ago on a nonviolent drug charge, gave a DNA sample as part of intake. Her profile flagged as a possible close relative, parent or sibling. We ran the algorithm twice. It's strong. Her name is Andrea Lewis. The name hung in the air like a door cracking open. Within days, Lena was on the road, driving past flat fields and truck stops, the city skyline shrinking in the rear view. The prison where Andrea Lewis was housed sat low and gray against a winter sky, metal fences, razor wire, the usual. Inside, concrete and fluorescent light. The visiting room smelled like disinfectant and something fried. Andrea came in wearing a standard issue uniform, her hair in tight braids, eyes wary but not surprised. Inmates get used to visits, lawyers, social workers, family if they're lucky, detectives if they're not. Lena laid out her badge and a copied page from the lab report. Andrea Lewis? Yeah. The woman's voice was tired, but there was iron in it. What's this about? I already did my appeals. This isn't about your case, Lena said. This is about Detroit, 1998. Something flickered in Andrea's eyes at the year. A flash. Gone. I left Detroit a long time ago, she said. Maybe, Lena replied. She slid the sketch across the table, the same one that had sat in a box for more than 20 years. But Detroit didn't leave you. Andrea stared at the drawing. Her hands, cuffed loosely in front of her, went utterly still. Her chest rose once, sharply, like a flinch. Where did you get this? A girl was found in an alley in November of '98, Lena said quietly. Her voice lost its hard edges, not out of softness, but out of respect. She was murdered. We never found out who she was. We took DNA from her. Years later, your DNA was entered into the system. The database says you and she are close family, parent or sibling. We think this might be your sister, or your daughter. We think this might be your blood. Andrea didn't speak for several seconds. Her jaw worked, the tendons in her neck standing out. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet but sharp. How old did you say she was? Estimated late teens to early 20s at time of death, Lena answered. We couldn't be precise back then, but the medical examiner's report suggests around 19. 19, Andrea repeated. The word came out like glass. Her cuffs clinked as she lifted a hand to her mouth, then dropped it. You said November? Yes. November of '98, Andrea whispered. She blinked hard, fighting something back, but it broke through anyway. Her name is not Jane Doe. Lena's heart kicked. What is her name? Andrea's gaze locked on the sketch, on the unfinished curve of a cheek, the faint line of a mouth someone had tried to give life with charcoal and paper. She nodded once, like she was agreeing to a deal. Her name is Mariah Lewis. She was my little sister. She had a stupid star tattoo on her ankle she got from some guy on a couch after we watched a music video. She used to say she was going to get out and take me with her. Her voice broke on that last word, and she swallowed hard. I guess she didn't. The name dropped into the case like a stone in water. Ripples went everywhere. Mariah, not Jane, not Doe. A family, a past, a story. Back in Detroit, records once considered irrelevant suddenly mattered. Old missing persons reports from Ohio and surrounding states, shelters, juvenile files, school transcripts. The picture sharpened. Mariah had run from a home where fists talked louder than words. She'd followed rumors of friends, jobs, escape routes that all led north, toward the city where dreams and nightmares shared the same street corner. Somewhere between the promise of getting out and the reality of survival, she'd wound up in that alley. But knowing her name didn't answer the question that had haunted Detroit since 1998. It only made it worse, because now, when they opened that box, when they walked that alley, when they stared at the old photos, they weren't looking at an unknown girl anymore. They were looking at Mariah, someone's kid sister, someone's runaway, someone whose last breath had been squeezed out between another person's fingers. In the lab, the machines kept humming. The next step was obvious. With Mariah identified, with her DNA profile refined and confirmed, the techs turned to the other sample, the material from under her fingernails. Skin cells that weren't hers, cells that had clung to her as she fought, cells that had waited quietly for years, stubborn, patient. They ran it through the system. They waited for a hit. And somewhere deep in a server that didn't exist when Mariah died, in a database built on blood and data and the promise that no one stays truly anonymous forever, lines of code began searching, comparing, matching. The city above went on with its noise and traffic and late-night sirens. People went to work, to school, to sleep. Most of them had never heard of a girl found in an alley in 1998. Most of them never would. But the machine didn't care about that. It was looking for a name. The hit doesn't come with a drum roll. It arrives as a timestamp in a log and a quiet phone call that slices through the hum of the squad room. Early evening, fluorescent lights buzzing, Lena bent over a stack of old reports when the lab line flashes on her desk. She picks up, expecting another still processing. Instead, the supervisor's voice is tight, controlled, carrying a current underneath. Detective Morales, we have a match. For a second, the room goes silent in her head. Just that line. A match. 27-year-old skin cells against millions of profiles. Science whispering what the alley never did. Lena forces her voice steady. Victim or offender? Offender, the supervisor answers. No drama, just fact. The DNA from under Mariah's fingernails hit on a profile in CODIS. Full match, confidence level very high. It's a male, previously convicted, name attached. Lena grabs a pen before her hand can shake. Give it to me. Price, the supervisor says. Damon L. Price. Date of birth, 1980. Detroit address at the time of his arrest. Currently, you might want to sit down for this. Lena doesn't sit. She presses the receiver harder to her ear. Currently what? Currently out, the supervisor finishes. He served time on a felony assault in the mid-2000s, released, parole completed. As of our last records, he's living back in the metro area. The pen almost snaps in Lena's fingers. Damon Price, the name from the old interviews, the one circled in red on yellowed reports. The kid with scratches on his arms and a star pendant in his pocket, the one they had and let walk. The one who looked Frank in the eye and said, "You got the wrong guy, you'll see." The past doesn't just knock, it kicks the door in. She prints the hit confirmation, the CODIS report, the new lab results. Black ink, cold font, hot impact, DNA profile from under victim's fingernails. Consistent with known offender Damon L. Price. Match probability, astronomical. The paper hums in her hand like a live wire. This isn't a hunch, a rumor, a shaky eyewitness. This is the victim herself, reaching out from the grave, clutching the man who put her there. The first person she thinks of isn't the chief, isn't the DA, it's Frank. She finds his number in an old contact list penciled in years ago, half smudged. It still works. A phone rings somewhere outside the city in a house that's seen more sunsets than sirens. When he answers, his voice is older than his file photo. Gravelly, suspicious. Yeah? Detective Calder, this is Detective Lena Morales, Cold Case Unit, Detroit PD. She doesn't waste words. I'm calling about the Grayshit and Kirby homicide, November 98. You're Jane Doe. A pause, a small exhale. You found her name? He asks, like he's been waiting 20 years for that one thing. Yes, Lena says. Her name was Mariah Lewis, and we did more than that. We got a DNA hit on the scrapings from under her fingernails. She hears the chair creak, imagines him sitting forward. Who? Damon Price, she says, lets it land. Full match. He's in the system from a later assault. He's out now. Silence on the line, not empty, loaded. When he speaks, his voice has changed. I knew it, he murmurs. But there's no triumph in it, just something hollow. We had him. We had him in a room, and we still let him walk. You didn't have the science then, Lena replies. You asked for DNA. The system wasn't ready. That's not on you. Tell that to her, Frank says quietly. Tell that to the girl in the alley. Later, he'll be in the squad room again. Older, slower, leaning on a cane he swears he doesn't need. For now, Lena focuses on the next move. DNA is powerful, but it's not a movie ending. It's an opening, a door into a building still full of shadows. They need a case. They need a narrative a jury can swallow. They need to rebuild everything from the alley up. She goes to see the chief. The mood shifts fast. Cold case hit. Suspect identified. Old failure. New chance. The words press conference start bouncing around corridors. Community closure. Justice after decades. Detroit cold case solved. Headline phrases. Easy copy, but Lena knows better. Right now, all they have is a match and a memory of a pendant. Damon will lawyer up fast. Any crack in the case, any whiff of sloppiness in 1998, and he'll wedge himself through it. The DA's office calls a meeting, a different building, same air of stale coffee and fluorescent fatigue. Young prosecutors, some of whom were in grade school when Mariah died, sit around a table with laptops open, talking about strategy. On the wall, a screen flickers with the CODIS report. Damon's rap sheet glows beneath it. Assault, domestic, bar fight that got out of hand. A restraining order from an ex-girlfriend that never led to charges but reads ugly in black and white. So we have victim DNA and offender DNA mixed under her nails, a prosecutor says, tapping the lab report. That's strong. Shows contact, shows struggle. He'll claim consensual, of course, but the pathology screams homicide. Plus, Lena adds, dropping a copy of the old file on the table, we had him with a star pendant that looked like the one ripped from her neck, scratches on his arms, in the area, within months of the murder. One of the younger attorneys flips through the 1998 interrogation transcript. The original DA declined charges, lack of evidence, no DNA, no direct witnesses. Times change, another prosecutor says. Juries trust science now. CODIS hit is a big deal. Narrative is clean. Predator slips through cracks in 98, finally caught by technology years later. Cold case solved. Lena's jaw tightens. Clean. That's the word they love. Clean story. Neat arc. Villain, victim, hero cops. But this case isn't clean. Nothing about a girl strangled in the rain and buried under paperwork is clean. We're not there yet, she says. We still don't have anyone putting Damon with Mariah that exact night. We have him nearby with something that looks like her pendant. We have his DNA under her nails. But if he claims he and Mariah were involved, that she scratched him during an argument days earlier, she shrugs. He muddies the timeline. We need more. Like what? The younger prosecutor asks. Pattern, Lena replies. Other women, other assaults, anyone who can talk about his hands on their throat, anyone who can say, this is who he is, this is what he does. Her next move isn't glamorous. It's hours at a computer, cross-referencing every incident Damon's name appears in, police reports, domestic disturbances that never made it to court, witness statements where he's the boyfriend or the guy who wouldn't leave. She drives to old addresses, finds exes who slam doors in her face until she shows them the sketch of Mariah. Some soften, some harden, some. One woman, mid-30s now, meets Lena on a broken stoop, cigarette between her fingers, shaking slightly. Yeah, I knew Damon, she says, exhaling smoke. Wish I didn't. Did he ever put his hands on you? Lena asks. The woman looks away. Once, twice, enough. Her hand drifts unconsciously to her own throat. He liked control, that feeling when you can't breathe and he decides when you get the air back. Did he talk about a girl, younger, small star tattoo on her ankle? Lena presses. Back in the late 90s? The woman thinks, blows out another cloud. He talked about a lot of girls, bragged. One time he said, you don't know what I've done. You don't know what I've gotten away with. I thought he was just being a punk. Guys say stuff like that. Her eyes meet Lena's. Guess maybe he wasn't. Every piece matters, every phrase. Gotten away with. Control. Hands on the throat. They're threads. Lena collects them, but she still needs the rope. The day she and Frank go to knock on Damon's door, the sky is low and gray, threatening snow. Suburban street, cracked sidewalks, small houses trying to look friendly with plastic lawn chairs and faded flags. The past doesn't always live where you expect it to. Sometimes it hides in plain daylight behind a front door with a squeaky screen. Frank insisted on coming. You don't have to do this, Lena told him. You're retired. He snorted. You just said the word price into my phone. That makes it my business again. They stand side by side on the porch. The bell doesn't work, so Lena knocks hard 3 times. Inside, footsteps. A pause, the sound of a lock. The door opens. Damon Price is older now, but the eyes are the same as in the interview photos from 98. Cool, watching, hair thinner, jaw softer. Life leaves marks, but some people don't change where it counts. He eyes the badges, the man beside Lena, and a small smirk flickers at the corner of his mouth. Well, damn, he says, if it isn't the ghost of Christmas past. Hello, Damon, Frank says, voice flat. He leans on his cane, but his stare doesn't wobble. Remember me? How could I forget, Damon replies. You wasted a whole day of my life back in the day, thought I killed some girl. What's this now, a reunion tour? Lena holds up a folded sheet of paper. We'd like to talk, Damon. He shrugs. You got a warrant? Not yet, she says. Right now we're just talking. He hesitates just long enough for her to see that he's weighing it. Then he steps aside. Fine, come in. I got nothing to hide. He smiles at Frank. I told you that before, didn't I? The living room is small, neat, too neat, like someone read about appearing normal in a magazine. No photos on the walls, no kids' toys, a TV, a couch, an ashtray. Damon sits, spreads his arms along the backrest, tries to own the space. So, to what do I owe the pleasure? You finally solve your little mystery. We're getting there, Lena says, taking a chair opposite. Frank remains standing, as if sitting would concede something. Do you remember a girl from back then, Damon? Late teens, brown hair, star tattoo on her ankle, name Mariah Lewis. A shadow crosses his face quick. Then it's gone, replaced by a slow smirk. Can't say I do. Like I told your friend here, I met a lot of girls. 90s were wild. Lena slides the paper across. CODIS printout, his name, his number, the words DNA profile match. She doesn't explain it. She doesn't need to. She watches his eyes as he reads. The smirk dies. His lips press into a line. That doesn't mean what you think it means, he says finally. It means your DNA is under her fingernails, Lena answers, voice tight. It means when she was dying in that alley, you were close enough for her to claw at you. It means this isn't just some story anymore, Damon. This is science. This is her hand on your skin, recorded and stored for 27 years, waiting for this exact moment. He laughs, but it's brittle. You serious? After all this time, you're going to parade some lab numbers in here and call me a murderer? You know how many times I hooked up back then? You know how many girls scratched? Maybe I knew her. Maybe we messed around. That doesn't mean I killed her. Then tell us, Franks cuts in. His voice isn't loud, but it slices. Tell us how you knew her. Tell us why you had a star pendant in your pocket when we pulled you over near the crime scene. Tell us why you had fresh scratches on your arms. Tell us why you lied back then. If you were innocent, why did you act like a guilty man? Damon's jaw works. The mask slips for a heartbeat, shows something meaner underneath. I didn't lie, he snaps. I told you I found that pendant. And maybe I did know her. Maybe she liked it rough. Maybe she scratched. You ever think of that? You cops always wanting a neat little monster. Makes the paperwork easier. Lena leans forward. Did you follow her into the alley, Damon? No. Did you put your hands around her throat? No. Did you feel her fight you? Feel her nails dig into your skin while you squeezed? He stands abruptly, anger flaring. I said no. The word hangs in the air. Hot, angry, useless. No. Denial is cheap. DNA isn't. We're done, Lena says, calmly rising. Next time we talk, it'll be in an interview room. With your lawyer present, you might want to call one. As they leave, Damon calls after them. You waited too long, he shouts. You got nothing. This is ancient history. Nobody cares. On the porch, wind biting at their faces, Frank exhales slowly. He's scared, he murmurs. He should be, Lena replies. But her stomach is a knot, because Damon is right about one thing. Time is a weapon for the defense, too. Memories fade, witnesses vanish, evidence gets lost. Juries don't like cases older than some of their members. That night, as news of the DNA hit leaks and whispers around the department, someone says it out loud in the hallway. That Detroit 1998 cold case, I heard it's finally solved. Solved! The word echoes in Lena's head like a gunshot and a lie at the same time. Because a name on a report, a suspect on notice, and a victim finally identified is not an ending. It's just the moment when all the ghosts step into the light and ask the city one question. Now that you know, what are you going to do about it? They call it solved, the way a news anchor hits a headline and moves on before the credits roll. Like one word can erase 27 years of silence. But inside the building where the air tastes like old coffee and broken promises, nobody's calling this finished. Not yet. Not while Damon Price is still sleeping in his own bed. Not while Mariah's name is barely starting to form on people's lips. Not while the case file that once said Jane Doe now screams in new ink and old blood. The next days move fast and slow at the same time. Fast in the way paperwork explodes, motions, warrants, subpoenas. Slow in the way every step has to be careful because the defense is going to pour over 1998 like it happened yesterday, hunting for cracks. Lena is there when the warrant comes through, when the judge signs it with a tight jaw and eyes that say, we better not be wasting the court's time, detective. Dated, stamped, authorized, search and seize, Damon's house, Damon's life, the past dragged out of drawers and closets and whatever dark corners he thought he could hide it in. The raid is not a Hollywood movie. No battering ram, no flashbangs. It's a knock, a shouted police warrant, and a shove of the door when Damon's too slow to move out of the way. Officers flood inside, gloved hands already reaching. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, closet. Everything bagged, tagged, logged. Lena walks through it all with the case file under her arm like a ghost inspector. The house is a museum of controlled normal. Couch, TV, sink with one plate in it, a few shirts in the closet, shoes lined up too neatly. It's what's not here that bothers her more than what is. No old boxes of photos, no mementos, no history. Like Damon decided a long time ago that the past belongs in someone else's house. Still, they find things. A shoebox under the bed with letters from women whose names match police reports. You scared me. Don't call me again. Stay away. A folded photo of a younger Damon with an arm around a girl whose face is scratched out with a pen. In the back of a drawer, under socks, a small velvet bag. Inside, a broken chain and a chipped black enamel heart. Not a star, but it's enough to tug at Lena's nerves. A pattern, cheap jewelry, broken on purpose, taken on purpose. They seize all of it. Computers, phones, old SIM cards, anything that might still hold a trace of who Damon talked to and when. They take a new DNA sample, swab inside his cheek, even though the system already has him. Redundancy, backup. Defense attorneys love poking at old evidence. Lena's not giving them an easy angle. Damon watches from the couch, hands cuffed in front of him, expression somewhere between bored and seething. You really think this is gonna stick? He asks, eyes on her. After all this time, you think a jury's gonna care about some dead girl from the 90s? Lena wants to say yes. She wants to say, they will. Instead, she just looks at him like he's already in a different room, a different world. I don't need them to care, Damon, she says. I just need them to believe the evidence. At the station, the room they put him in is small, windowless, painted in a color that was meant to be calming and ended up just being tired. A camera in the corner blinks red. Lena sits across from him with a fresh recording sheet on the table. Frank sits in the corner, silent, a witness from another decade. Damon's lawyer arrives, a sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of man who's made a career out of reasonable doubt. My client is only here as a courtesy, he says. He's answered your questions before. We all know how that went. Lena slides a photo across the table. Not the crime scene. Not yet. It's a picture of Mariah from a missing persons file dug up out of Ohio, a school snapshot taken before she ran, before the tattoo, before the alley, younger, softer, smiling like she still believed the world might be fair. This is Mariah Lewis, Lena says. You know her. Damon's lawyer reaches to pull the photo back, but Damon's hand gets there first. His fingers curl around the edge, knuckles white, his eyes lock on the image for a heartbeat too long. There it is, a glitch in the script. Never seen her before in my life, he says, voice flat. The lawyer clears his throat. Detective, my client has stated. Your DNA is under her fingernails, Lena cuts in, turning a lab sheet so Damon can read it. You can say you never saw her, you can say you don't remember her, but the cells she scraped off your skin while she was fighting for her life are saying something else. The lawyer leans forward. We contend that any contact between my client and this woman was consensual and occurred at a time separate from her unfortunate death. You have no eyewitnesses, no physical evidence placing him in that alley at that exact time, no confession. You have an old pendant and a chain that could belong to anyone. This is a stretch, detective, a dangerous one. The word unfortunate burns in Lena's ears. Unfortunate, like a missed train or a bad haircut. She wants to throw the crime scene photos down, force them both to look. The bruises on Mariah's neck, the burst blood vessels in her eyes, the way her hand was reaching for the wall. Instead, she keeps her tone cool. Then let's talk about pattern, she says, about the way your client has treated women his entire adult life, the threats, the assaults, the restraining orders, the bruises that faded before they ever saw a courtroom. Let's talk about the ex-girlfriend who says he liked to hold her throat until she couldn't breathe. The lawyer smiles, thin and practiced. And let's talk about relevance, Detective Morales, about how far back you can go before a jury starts wondering why you're leaning so hard on ghosts. Ghosts. The word hangs in the air like cigarette smoke. Frank finally speaks, his voice a low growl. She's not a ghost, he says. Her name is Mariah. She was real enough on that slab, real enough when I walked through the rain to tell some women we still didn't know who their daughter was. You think time makes that softer? It doesn't. It just makes it worse. Damon looks at him, something like amusement flickering in his eyes. You still on this, old man? Thought you'd have given up by now. I don't give up on dead kids, Frank says, meeting his gaze. I just wait for the world to catch up. The lawyer calls it. We're done here. My client won't be answering any more questions. If you want to continue this, charge him. So they do. The arrest paperwork becomes a machine of its own. The charge is clear: murder, homicide with intent, strangulation, serious, heavy. The booking photo they take of Damon now will sit next to the one from his old assault charge in digital files that will outlive all of them. He's processed, printed, led to a holding cell. For the first time since November 1998, the line between him and the outside world hardens. Steel, concrete, locks. When the news breaks, it doesn't break quietly. Detroit 1998 cold case solved. The headline screams on local channels, on scrolling tickers, on websites hungry for clicks. They show the sketch of Mariah, the updated photo, her name. They show Damon's mugshot, 27 years apart, And still the same eyes. They show B-roll of the alley, now cleaner but still narrow, still unforgiving. They call it closure. They call it justice. They roll out the words like they're part of a script. Andrea Lewis watches it on a TV, bolted high on a wall in a prison day room, surrounded by other women who pretend not to stare. The anchor says Mariah's name wrong the first time, then corrects it, lips pressing carefully around the syllables. Andrea's breath catches anyway. She doesn't cry, not here, not where tears are just another kind of weakness. But later, in her bunk, she traces the outlines of a memory only she can see. Mariah on a torn couch, laughing at something stupid. Mariah saying, "I'm getting out of here, Dre. I'm not dying on this block." Mariah walking out the door one day and not coming back. After the broadcast, Lena gets a collect call. She takes it in her office, door half closed, light outside already fading. "Detective?" Andrea's voice is rough over the line. "I saw the news." "Yeah," Lena says softly. "I figured you might." "They said they arrested someone," Andrea continues. There's no triumph in her tone. Just a brittle, shaking thing that might be hope, might be fear. "They said they found him after all this time." "We have a suspect," Lena confirms. "His DNA matches the sample from under Mariah's nails. We're building the case for trial." "Will I get to be there?" Andrea asks. "If there's a trial." "If you want to," Lena says. "You'd have the right to make a statement." As next of kin. There's a pause. "I don't know what I'd say," Andrea admits quietly. "What do you say to a man who choked the life out of your sister and then got to walk around breathing free for 20-something years?" Lena doesn't have an answer. The things they teach you in the academy don't cover this. "You say whatever truth you can live with," she finally replies. The system begins to grind. There are arraignments, hearings, dates set and shifted. The defense files motion after motion. Exclude this, question that. They attack the chain of custody on the fingernail scrapings. They point out that the evidence sat for decades in storage. Who handled it? Who moved it? Did someone mislabel a tube? Did someone sneeze near the rack? The lab supervisor takes the stand just for the pretrial hearing, walking the court through chain of custody logs so old they had to be scanned from faded paper. Every signature, every fridge, every transfer. "We maintained integrity," she says calmly. "The sample is as reliable as any other we've processed." The defense pushes. "You're saying that in 27 years there wasn't a single mistake?" "I'm saying," she answers, "that the documentation shows none, and the science doesn't lie." The judge listens, eyes narrowed, fingers steepled. Lawyers argue, voices rising and falling. Outside the courtroom, the world spins on. Another headline, another scandal, another crisis to distract people from an old alley and a dead girl who never got a headline when she needed it most. On a cold morning before one of the key hearings, Lena finds Frank in the hallway, leaning against the wall, staring at a framed photo of officers from a decade ago, faces he used to know. "You ready?" she asks. "For what?" he mutters. "To sit in there and listen to them talk about her like a piece of evidence, to act like you're the one who failed her." He looks at her, eyes tired but burning. They won't say it out loud, but that's what this is, Morales. Every time they mention the original investigation, they mean, why didn't you nail this guy when you had the chance? "You did what you could with what you had," she says. "They're going to try to make it about your mistakes. We're going to make it about his choices." "You sound like a press release," he snorts, but there's no bite in it, just a weary kind of affection. "You think the jury will care that we didn't have the toys back then?" "I think," she answers slowly, "the jury will care about Mariah. If we do our job right, she's the one in the room, not your regrets." Inside, the legal dance resumes. The defense brings up unavoidable contamination risks, memory decay, unreliable recollections from decades-old witnesses. They hint at alternative suspects, other men in the neighborhood, other cars seen near the alley that night. They pull out the old file's own ghosts. Detective Calder himself considered other persons of interest, the lawyer says, some of whom were never fully cleared. Isn't it true that at the time he could not definitively place Mr. Price at the scene? "We didn't have DNA then," Frank says into the microphone. His voice is steady, but his hands, folded in his lap, are tight. "If we did, we wouldn't be here now. We'd have been in this room 20 years ago." "So you're relying now on technology to fill in gaps that human memory cannot?" "I'm relying," Frank says quietly, on the fact that when a girl fights for her life, she tells you who she was fighting. That's what those samples are, her last witness statement. The judge denies the motion to throw out the DNA. It stands. That's a win. But it doesn't feel like a victory parade. It feels like someone just kept the lights on in a tunnel. The trial date is set, months away. Time enough for the story to twist again. Reporters send emails, leave messages, ask for interviews. How does it feel to finally have this case solved? One of them asks Lena in a voicemail. She doesn't call back, because solved is when a mother sleeps without seeing her kid on a slab every time she closes her eyes. Solved is when there are no more questions scratching at the back of your brain at 3 in the morning. And this case still has questions. Small ones maybe, ugly ones. Why did Damon keep that pendant back then, but not keep any trace of Mariah's existence now? Why did certain witnesses from 1998 vanish off the map without leaving forwarding addresses? Why does one line in an old report hint at another car, another man, another shadow near the alley that nobody ever followed up on because they were too busy chasing Damon and his smirk and his scratches? In the stillness between hearings, Lena goes back to the box again, to the photos, to the reports, to the marginal notes written in Frank's cramped hand. She sees all the missed chances and all the work and all the nights that led them here. She sees a city that forgot and remembered and forgot again. She sees a headline that's already been written, Detroit 1998 cold case solved, but she also sees something else, a truth that isn't as clean as the press release, as the court docket, as the TV script, a truth that sits heavy in her chest every time she thinks of that alley. This case might end with a conviction. It might end with a man led away in chains, with judges and verdicts and cameras. It might, but solved is a word for people who need endings. And some stories, especially the ones that start in the dark and the rain in the back of a forgotten alley, don't end. They just echo. The days before a murder trial don't feel like countdown clocks. They feel like pressure cookers. The city might hear dates, see schedules scrolling under a news anchor's smile, but inside the homicide unit, the calendar is just a wall someone's pinned a target to. Everything points at it, every file, every late night, every question Lena can't stop asking herself when the lights are off and the house is too quiet. The words on the evening news say it crisp and easy. Detroit 1998, cold case solved, suspect to stand trial. Solved. As if the courtroom is just a formality, as if the ending's already written. But in the cold case room, there's a hum under the fluorescent lights, a different rhythm, doubt. It starts with a word buried in an old report. Lena is cross-checking everything for the 100th time, chasing ghosts and handwriting from another era, when a half-faded sentence catches her eye. Patrol Officer Log, 2:17 a.m., November 14th, 1998. Observed dark sedan leaving vicinity of alley at speed. Possible witness or involved vehicle. Direction, eastbound. No plate obtained. She's seen it before. Everyone has. But this time it sticks like a splinter. The file shows they did a canvass, asked around, checked a few known locals with dark sedans. Nothing. The note got circled once, then abandoned. The rest of the investigation locked on Damon and never really let go. She flips pages, looks at the map, the alley, the corner, the direction the car fled, eastbound, away from the main strip, away from the bars, toward a dead industrial zone that, in '98, was half empty and fully dangerous. If Damon strangled Mariah in that alley, why would someone else be speeding away at the same moment? Could be coincidence. Wrong place, wrong time, but coincidence is another word for we got tired of asking. She walks it again in her head. Mariah in the alley, Damon close, too close, fingers on a throat, nails digging. Somewhere nearby, an engine revs. Headlights cut past the mouth of the alley. A shadow sees something, doesn't stop, drives away with their eyes wide and their mouth shut. Witness, or accomplice, or something worse. At the lab, the machines don't care about dark sedans. They care about numbers, patterns, peaks on a graph. Lena sits across from the lab supervisor with a fresh cup of coffee and a legal pad full of questions. We have Damon's profile, she says. Full match under the nails. How clean is the mixture? Any sign of a second contributor? The supervisor pulls up a set of digital graphs, lines jagged and precise. The sample is degraded, she says, but the major profile is clearly Damon's. There are hints of a minor contributor, but it's weak, likely the victim herself or background noise. Nothing we can call, not by current standards. But if someone else handled her, Lena presses, if another set of hands touched her before or after she died, would we see that? Maybe, the supervisor answers. Maybe not. You're asking a 27-year-old tube to tell you more than it was designed to hold. Lena nods. Still the question drills. Another car, another shadow, another set of hands. She takes it to Frank. He's in the squad room, staring at the old whiteboard they brought back out for the trial prep. Names, dates, arrows. At the corner in a different color, the original sketch of Mariah, pinned like a newspaper clipping. You remember this? She asks, holding up the photocopy of the patrol log. He squints, reads. Yeah, he says after a beat. We got it from a radio call. One of the uniforms thought it might be related. We looked. It went nowhere. No plate, no make, just dark sedan. Half the cars in the city were dark sedans. But it bothered you enough to write it down, Lena says. Everything bothered me on that case, he replies. You know how it is. You learn to live with some splinters. You don't pull them out, you just stop picking at them or you'll never move. What if this one matters now, she asks. What if defense finds it and says, see, there could have been someone else, some mysterious unknown driver, someone the police never tracked down, reasonable doubt. He breathes out through his nose. They will say that. Count on it. That's their job. Your job is to keep the story straight. Girl strangled, Damon's DNA under her nails, pendant in his pocket, lies in his mouth. You keep the center of gravity where it belongs. Center of gravity. The phrase sticks. Trials aren't just about facts. They're about what everything orbits around. The victim, the suspect, the doubt. The day jury selection begins, the courthouse buzzes like a beehive. Reporters cluster on the stone steps, breath steaming in the cold. Microphones, cameras. They don't get inside. Not for this part. But they hover, waiting for angles. Vintage case meets modern science, one of them says into a camera. Old Detroit meets new justice. The words sound slick, practiced, ready to be cut into promo reels. Inside, it's all fluorescent lights and scuffed tile. Potential jurors sit on hard benches, clutching summons forms. Some look bored, some look annoyed, some look scared. Murder changes the air, even before anyone hears the details. The prosecutor asks questions in a steady, professional tone. Can you be fair in a case where the alleged crime took place before some of you were born? How do you feel about scientific evidence, specifically DNA? Do any of you have strong feelings about cold cases? Hands go up. Stories spill out. An uncle shot in the 80s, killer never caught. A neighbor's daughter who disappeared and never came home. A man who watched a documentary once and decided DNA was either magic or a trick. The defense has its own questions. Do you believe the police are more likely to arrest the right person or the wrong person? Do any of you think it's suspicious that this case lay dormant for so long? Can you hold it against my client that his name appears in an old file even though he was never charged at the time? Lena sits in the gallery watching faces. She looks for flinches when they mention Mariah, for tight jaws when they say strangulation, for eyes that glaze over at the mention of lab reports. These 12 strangers, whoever they end up being, will decide whether the word solved sticks or peels off like wet paint. Andrea Lewis is brought to court under guard, chains muted under her clothes, positioned near the front where she can see the room but not feel the full weight of its eyes. She watches the process with a detached expression, but her fingers twist the edge of a tissue until it shreds. On a break, Lena approaches, nodding at the deputy to give them a little space. You okay? She asks. I'm sitting in a room picking people to listen to how my sister died, Andrea answers. How do you think I am? Fair enough. Lena doesn't sugarcoat. You don't have to testify if you don't want to, she says. We can build the case without putting you up there. Andrea snorts softly. You can call this solved without my voice, but I can't live with myself if I don't say her name in that room at least once. She looks up, eyes hard now. You catch a man after 20-something years and tell the world about your fancy DNA machines, that's great. But if they walk out of here only remembering science and not Mariah, what was the point? Another splinter, another truth. When the jury is finally seated, when the last objection is overruled and the last alternate dismissed, the room shifts. The trial begins. Opening statements. The prosecutor stands, buttoned suit, controlled cadence, and paints the story like a grim mural. In November of 1998, a young woman named Mariah Lewis was strangled to death in an alley in Detroit. For years, she had no name in our system. For years, her killer walked free. Thanks to advances in DNA technology, we now know whose skin was under her fingernails as she fought for her life. It belongs to the defendant, Damon L. Price. Eyes turn to Damon. He sits at the defense table in a neatly pressed shirt, tie not quite sitting right, expression carefully neutral. He looks smaller in person than he does on the news chyron. More ordinary. That's the trick, Lena thinks. Monsters rarely look like monsters. They look like people you pass in the grocery store. They look like men who smiled and lied in small rooms in 1998. The defense gets up next. The lawyer is smooth practice, born for these floors. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he begins. This case is not about whether something terrible happened in 1998. We know it did. A young woman died, and that is a tragedy. This case is about whether, decades later, with faded memories and aging evidence, the state can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my client is the one responsible. They will show you DNA, but we will show you doubt. He leans into the words. We will show you that DNA can tell you two people had contact, but not when, not how, not why. We will show you that the investigation in 1998 was incomplete, focused too quickly on Damon and ignoring other leads, including a mysterious vehicle leaving the scene that was never fully traced. We will show you that the system failed then, and it is trying to fix its embarrassment now by forcing a narrative onto a man who has already denied any involvement. At the end of this trial, when you are asked to say guilty or not guilty, I submit that the only honest answer in a case this old, this uncertain, is not guilty. He sits. The jury looks back and forth between tables like they're watching two anchors reading the same story with different headlines. Witnesses begin. The officer who found Mariah's body, older now, hair thinner, waist thicker, his hands still tremble a little when he describes the alley, the rain, the way her hand was reaching toward the wall. The medical examiner, walking the jury through bruises, petechial hemorrhages, the science of strangulation in calm clinical language that still makes a woman in the back row cover her mouth. The lab supervisor explaining how a fleck under a nail can become a barcode that spells out one name and one name only. The defense attacks. Isn't it true, the lawyer asks, that the storage conditions in the late 90s were not up to today's standards? Isn't it true that partial profiles can be misinterpreted? Isn't it possible that unidentified contributors' DNA was present at the scene? The supervisor stands her ground. We followed protocols. We reviewed them. The match to Mr. Price is definitive. Then it's Frank's turn. He walks to the stand slowly, cane tapping a quiet rhythm, the past visible in the lines on his face. He swears in, sits. The prosecutor walks him through the early days, the alley, the pendant, the scratches on Damon's arms in that first interview, the decision not to charge. We didn't have this, he says, nodding toward the lab charts displayed on a screen. We had our eyes and our gut and a system that wasn't ready. We asked for DNA testing. It sat in a backlog. That's not an excuse. That's just the truth. The defense approaches with the old file like a weapon. Detective Calder, isn't it also true that you considered other possible suspects, that you logged a vehicle fleeing the scene that was never identified, that your investigation did not conclusively place Mr. Price in that alley on the night in question? Yes, he says. We considered other possibilities. That's what you do. You chase everything. Some of it pans out, some doesn't. We never put anyone in that alley with absolute certainty, until now. And you became fixated on my client, did you not? The lawyer pushes. You interrogated him for hours. You seized his belongings. You wanted him to be your suspect. I wanted someone to be accountable for a dead girl, Frank replies, jaw tight. If the DNA had come back to a different name, I'd be sitting here saying that name instead. It didn't. It came back to him. After court that day, headlines hit again. Detective admits incomplete investigation. Defense targets old police work in cold case trial. The story keeps shifting, the center of gravity pulling between past and present, guilt and doubt, science and memory. That night, Lena stands in the alley off Gratiot and Kirby once more. The city hums around her, headlights sliding past, music thumping from some open window down the block. The bricks are the same, the angle of the lamplight is the same, the stain on the asphalt isn't. That washed away years ago. She imagines Mariah here, breath clouding, lungs burning, Damon's face above hers, fingers locked, nails scraping, somewhere an engine revs. A dark sedan speeds by, someone sees a flash of movement and keeps driving, telling themselves it's none of their business. Detroit, 1998 cold case solved. The phrase is already coded into the broadcast scripts, the press releases, the public imagination. A victory. A win for technology, for persistence, for justice delayed but not denied. But as Lena stands in the alley, as wind cuts between the buildings and her breath curls white in front of her, she can feel it, a faint, stubborn echo under the surface of the story. Something about that night still doesn't fit. And in a city that's learned the hard way that what doesn't fit can come back like a bad headline years later, that echo is not just background noise. It's the sound of a mystery refusing to stay solved. Courtroom air is different from street air. It's heavier, thicker. It carries every whisper, every cough, every scraped chair leg like it might be evidence. By the time Andrea Lewis takes the stand, the room is already loaded, jurors stiff in their seats, Damon staring straight ahead, Lena at the prosecution table with a pen in her fingers she hasn't clicked in 10 minutes because she's afraid the sound will break something fragile. They swear Andrea in, right hand up, voice steady enough to pass, though Lena can see the tremor in her shoulders. Prison uniform, replaced with plain clothes the state approved for court. Nothing flashy, nothing that might make a juror think about where she sleeps at night instead of who she's here for. When she sits, she looks smaller than in the prison day room, but her eyes are sharp, locked. Ms. Lewis, the prosecutor says gently, do you know why you're here today? Yes, Andrea says, no hesitation. I'm here because that girl you keep calling the victim is my sister. Mariah. The name lands, clean, heavy. It hangs for a beat in the thick air, and a couple of jurors shift like they're adjusting to a new weight. Did you know back in 1998 that your sister was in Detroit? The prosecutor asks. No, Andrea answers. I knew she wanted to leave. We both did. Let's just say we grew up in a house you wanted to get out of. She was younger than me, but she was always the one saying she had a plan. I thought she'd go south. She ended up here. She glances around the courtroom. I didn't find that out until you people called me and said you had her DNA in a freezer. The prosecutor lets that sit, then steps forward. Can you tell the jury about Mariah, who she was before this case file, before this courtroom? Andrea exhales. It's a shaky sound, but her words come out sharp. She was loud and quiet. Depends on who was in the room. She loved cheap music videos and expensive clothes she could never buy. She'd draw stars on everything, not hearts, stars. Said she didn't believe in love, just in escape routes. That star on her ankle? She nods toward the blown-up autopsy photo, the one cropped to show the small crooked tattoo. She used to talk about it before she ever got it. Said when she had that ink, it meant she was free. A juror in the front row blinks rapidly. Another presses her lips hard together. They're listening, feeling. That matters. Did Mariah ever talk about being afraid of anyone? The prosecutor asks. A boyfriend, an older man, anyone who might hurt her? Andrea thinks for a moment, eyes drifting up toward the ceiling as if the answer is written there. We were scared of a lot of people, she says finally. Where we grew up, fear was just another bill you paid every month. She did mention a guy once, not by name, just some Detroit dude who said he could get her into clubs, into a better life. She laughed like she didn't believe him, but she still packed her bag. Did she ever mention the defendant Damon Price by name? The prosecutor presses. No, Andrea says. But that doesn't mean he wasn't there. It just means I didn't get that far with her story before it ended. The prosecutor nods, voice softening. Ms. Lewis, what did it feel like to find out, decades later, that your sister had been killed the same week you thought she'd just run off and stop calling? Andrea's jaw works. She could cry here. It would play well, but she doesn't. Instead, her voice drops to a low, controlled burn. You ever been walking around with a missing piece of yourself so long you forget it's missing? She asks, eyes flicking to the jurors. And then somebody drops it in your lap and it's got a toe tag on it? That's what it felt like finding her and losing her in the same breath. She looks straight at Damon now. And knowing that while I was tearing my life apart, trying not to become another statistic, the man who took her breath away was out here taking more. The prosecutor follows her gaze. So do 12 strangers in the jury box. Thank you, Ms. Lewis, he says. No further questions. The defense rises, adjusts his tie, smiles that tight lawyer smile that says, I'm about to hurt you and call it my job. Ms. Lewis, he begins, voice gentle in a way that makes Lena's skin crawl. First, I'm sorry for your loss, truly, but I have to ask you some questions that may be difficult, you understand? I understand you're going to try to use my grief like a wedge, Andrea says flatly. Just get to it. A couple of jurors almost smile at that. The lawyer doesn't. You said you did not know your sister was in Detroit at the time of her death, he continues. You had no idea where she was, correct? Correct, Andrea says. You did not witness her death? No. You did not see her with my client, Mr. Price, at any time? No. So everything you've told this jury today about her, while heartfelt, pertains to who she was before she came to this city, he summarizes. Not what happened in that alley, not who was there, not what was done to her. Is that fair to say? Andrea leans in toward the microphone. What's fair, she says slowly, is that you remember she was a person and not just a lab result. But yeah, I wasn't there. If I was, we wouldn't be sitting in this courtroom right now. Because either she'd still be alive or I'd be on trial with your client. The lawyer opens his mouth to object, then thinks better of it. No further questions, he mutters, sitting down. When Andrea steps down from the stand, her legs are shaking. Lena catches her eye as deputies lead her out. There's no comfort in it, just recognition. Two women in different uniforms standing on opposite sides of the glass and all the same edges. The next witness is less cinematic, but to Lena just as important. It's the patrol officer whose 2:17 a.m. note started itching under her skin days ago. He's older, but not as old as Frank. The kind of cop who went from rookie to middle management while this case sat in a box. Officer Stein, the prosecutor says, can you tell the court what you observed on the night of November 14th, 1998, near the alley off Greatshot and Kirby? Stein clears his throat. Yes, I was on patrol in the area when I saw a dark sedan leaving the vicinity of the alley at a high rate of speed. Time was approximately 2:17 a.m. I noted it in my log as per procedure. Were you able to obtain a license plate? The prosecutor asks. No, Stein admits. Weather was bad. Rain, visibility was poor. The vehicle turned quickly. I only caught the shape and color. For the record, the prosecutor says, what did you do with that information? I called it in, Stein replies. Radioed dispatch, logged it as a possible related vehicle or witness vehicle. Was told to keep patrolling and report back if I saw it again. I did not. The defense stands. Officer Stein, in your professional opinion, is it possible that this speeding car had absolutely nothing to do with the crime? Yes, Stein says immediately. It's possible. Is it also possible, the lawyer continues smoothly, that it did in fact have something to do with the crime and that the person driving that car was never located, never questioned, never cleared? Stein's jaw tightens. Yes, he says. That's possible too. So we have, in essence, a mystery car, the defense says, turning to the jury. A dark sedan leaving the scene and disappearing into the night. An unknown driver, unknown passengers, unknown actions. Thank you, Officer Stein. No further questions. Lena watches the jurors. Some scribble notes. Some stare blankly. One man in the back glances at Damon, then at the empty door as if expecting someone else to walk through it. That's what the defense wants, a ghost in the driver's seat. A shadow jurors can hang their doubts on. During a recess, Lena corners Stein in the hallway. Back then, she asks in a low voice, did you think that car mattered? I thought everything mattered, he says, rubbing his forehead. But we were drowning, and once Calder locked onto Price, once the word pendant started floating around, that car became just another maybe. You know how many maybes we had back then? Too many, she says. He nods. You really think someone else was there? She pauses. I think someone else could have seen something, or done something, and we never found them. That bothers me. Welcome to the club, Detective Morales, Stein says, and walks away. The prosecution rests after a week that feels like a year. They've laid it out. Mariah's life, her death, the science, the pattern of violence in Damon's past. They've dragged old documents into the light, replayed 1998 under a high-definition lens. The jurors look tired. So does everyone else. Then it's the defense's turn to tell a different story with the same bones. They call Damon's old friend to the stand first, a man named Curtis with tired eyes and a cautious voice. Back in the 90s, did you and Mr. Price spend time together? The lawyer asks. Yeah, Curtis says. We hung out. Bars, clubs, same crew. Did you ever see Mr. Price with a young woman matching Mariah Lewis's description? The lawyer continues. Curtis thinks. Maybe. I mean, there were a lot of girls. We were out all the time. Could have been her. Could have been someone else. The defense nods. Did you ever see Mr. Price act violently toward women? Curtis shrugs. He got loud, got jealous. But we all did. That was the scene. I never saw him choke nobody to death in no alley, if that's what you're asking. So you never saw him leave with a girl and come back without her? Agitated, scratched? The lawyer presses. No, Curtis says firmly. If I had, I'd remember. On cross, the prosecutor slices through the calm. Mr. Curtis, you were arrested in 2002 for aggravated assault. That correct? Curtis shifts. Yeah, but charges were dropped. And in that case, wasn't it alleged that you and Mr. Price were involved in beating another man outside a club? The prosecutor asks. That you acted together? Objection sustained. The jury hears it anyway. The defense calls an expert next, a forensic consultant who speaks fluent uncertainty. DNA is a powerful tool, he says, but it has limitations. It cannot by itself establish the timing of contact. It cannot tell you whether contact was violent or consensual. It cannot isolate all contributors in a degraded sample. In a case this old, with storage conditions from the late 1990s, there is always a risk of contamination or misinterpretation. How often, the defense asks with a hint of reverence, have you seen DNA evidence used improperly in court? More often than you'd like to know, the expert replies. Lena's pen digs into her notepad hard enough to tear the paper. When Damon decides to testify, it's a risk. His lawyer warns him. You don't have to, he says. They haven't met their burden, but Damon insists. I'm not letting them be the only voice, he says. They already wrote my story once back then. I'm not letting them do it again while I sit quiet. He takes the stand in a crisp shirt that doesn't quite hide the tension in his shoulders, swears in, sits. The defense leads. Mr. Price, did you kill Mariah Lewis? The lawyer asks. No, Damon says, clear, loud. I did not. Did you ever meet a young woman who might have been her? He continues. Damon shifts, plays the line he's rehearsed. I might have. Like I said to the cops back in the day, I met a lot of girls. I went out, I partied. It's possible I hooked up with her. It's possible we scratched each other. That was part of it. But I did not kill her. Did you ever follow her into an alley and strangle her? The lawyer presses. No, Damon says again, jaw clenching. I never did that. The defense sits. The room holds its breath as the prosecutor rises. Mr. Price, he begins, do you recall being stopped by police in early 1999, driving near the location of the homicide? Yes, Damon says. They pulled me over for nothing. Do you recall during that stop, officers discovering a pendant and broken chain in your possession? It was something I found, Damon insists. Do you recall having fresh scratches on your arms? The prosecutor presses. Yeah, Damon says, from a fight, from a girl, from whatever. It was a long time ago. Those scratches, the prosecutor says, voice hardening, match the position, depth, and pattern of defensive wounds found on men who've assaulted women in other cases. The pendant matched the kind of cheap enamel necklace ripped from Mariah's neck. Your DNA is under her nails, and you want this jury to believe it's all just coincidence? Damon leans forward. I want them to believe the truth, he snaps. You lost this girl in a file for 20 years. You lost the car that drove off that night. Now you want to make up for it by putting my name in bold letters because it fits your headline. He looks directly at the jury. They didn't catch who did this back then. They're trying to catch somebody now. That doesn't mean that somebody is me. The words hang. He's not stupid. He hits the sore spot. System failure. Lost leads. Time. When court adjourns that day, Lena doesn't go back to the unit. She doesn't go home. She finds herself drawn once again to the alley. It's become a ritual, a way of measuring whether anything in this story actually moves. The alley is in shadow now, daylight gone, lamplight buzzing overhead. There's a new security camera on the corner facing the street. It wouldn't have seen Mariah. Wrong angle, wrong year. But it's there, a silent reminder that the city learned one small lesson too late. She stands where the body lay, closes her eyes, tries to feel it. What's missing? What's off? The dark sedan, the extra DNA noise, the pendant that wasn't exactly the same, the neighbor's half memories, Damon's eyes when he looked at the school photo of a girl he swears he never met. Behind her, a car passes slow, bass rattling its windows. For a second, the headlights wash over the bricks, over her shadow, over that slick patch of asphalt where rain once mingled with blood. In that white glare, she sees it again. The thing that's been scratching at her since this trial started, since the file came out of the box. Yes, the science points at Damon. Yes, the pattern fits. Yes, the city wants this neat ending. But somewhere out there, someone else drove away from this alley at 2:17 a.m., never seen, never named, never asked a single question. And until she knows who was behind that wheel, the words Detroit 1998 cold case solved sound less like a verdict and more like a headline written too early, slapped on a story that's still moving in the dark.